The first invasion signal did not arrive as a warning, but as a mocking laugh that rippled across every communication channel on Earth. It came from a species calling themselves the Vraxis Dominion, conquerors of 100 worlds and self-proclaimed arbiters of galactic superiority. Their generals stood within colossal warships that eclipsed the sun as they descended, and without hesitation, they broadcast a taunt that would echo across human memory forever. Your guns are toys. Your courage is amusing. Your resistance will be brief. Those words, dripping with arrogance, ignited fear across the planet. Yet they also stoked a quiet fire in those who refused to surrender. Among them was a man known to his fellow soldiers as Ghostwind. His real name mattered little. What mattered was the precision in his hands and the silence in his heart. Ghostwind had spent years moving through battlefields where visibility was a luxury and mercy was a myth. He was lean, disciplined, and sharper than the rifles he carried, with eyes that held the coldness of men who had seen too much and backed away from none of it. He never boasted of the enemies he felled or the missions he completed. He believed survival was its own testimony, and skill required no applause. When invasion shattered Earth's defenses and millions were forced underground, Ghostwind remained above, refusing to yield an inch of the land he had sworn to protect. The Vraxis Dominion arrived with planetary shields, gravity rifts, and weapons crafted to shatter continents. Their general commanded fleets from armor platforms suspended over cities, speaking through holograms that flickered like monstrous phantoms. They believed humanity would crumble swiftly, admiring the spectacle as if observing insects struggle beneath glass. Yet despite their technological dominance, they underestimated the stubborn tenacity of the species they intended to enslave. Ghostwind watched the initial wave of destruction from a snow-laden ridge overlooking the Rockies. He saw mountain faces collapse under beams that sliced stone as if it were paper. He watched the sky burn crimson, and he listened to the frightened whispers of scattered resistance units trying to stand their ground. He felt none of the panic that gripped the world. He only felt a rising stillness, the kind that always settled over him before a decisive moment. In that stillness, he began to understand the central truth of the conflict. Humanity could not match the aliens in numbers or technology, but they could confront them with resilience, unpredictability, and an unbreakable will. The first Vraxis general to enter the mountain corridor was Zorith, a towering figure encased in obsidian armor that shimmered with pulsing energy veins. He took pleasure in broadcasting messages to the survivors scattered across the region, taunting them with their own helplessness. His words reached Ghostwind's comm receiver through static, yet the disdain within them remained sharp. "Do not run," the general declared. "Do not hide. I want you to see how a superior force dismantles your primitive illusions." Ghostwind adjusted the dial on his battered receiver until the voice faded into background noise. He had no interest in receiving instructions from an invader. Instead, he studied the alien patterns, their flight paths, their landing cycles. Everything he observed fed into a single goal, determining where he was needed most. He carried with him a customized rifle he had rebuilt in the dark of a ruined barn, using fragments of alien alloy fused to human steel. It was untested, perhaps unstable, but it was the only tool he had that might pierce a Vraxis shield. Communication with the remaining resistance operatives became scarce as enemy jammers swept the region, but Ghostwind managed to contact a unit hiding beneath a collapsed bunker near the foothills. Their commander, weary and short of breath, provided the crucial detail Ghostwind needed. General Zorth had anchored his cruiser along a ridge less than 2 kilometers away, lowering his shield periodically to broadcast for maximum intimidation. It was a flaw born not of necessity but of arrogance, and Ghostwind intended to exploit it. He moved through the frozen terrain with deliberate steps, his breath slow and controlled. Snow clung to his thermal cloak, blending him into the landscape. Every broken branch, every shifting shadow, every tremor in the wind mattered. Approaching the ridge, he crawled atop a ledge of ice and settled his rifle against a bed of snow, adjusting its angle with the familiarity of ritual. The cruiser hovered in the distance, glowing like a dark star suspended above the mountain. Zor stood on its command deck, magnified by transparent screen for all surviving humans to see. Ghostwind looked through his scope and centered the crosshairs on the alien general's chest. His heartbeat slowed until it felt like a distant drum fading into silence. For a moment, He imagined the entire world holding its breath with him. He inhaled deeply, let the cold air fill his lungs, and exhaled until everything inside him narrowed to a single point of focus. Then he steadied his finger on the trigger, and the shield flickered. The faint flicker of the alien shield was all Ghost Wind needed to confirm that his earlier calculations were correct. The experimental round he had fired had not been designed to kill, but to disrupt, destabilizing Vrax's energy grid long enough to fracture their technological superiority. As he watched the shimmering field ripple, like disturbed water, the cold certainty of opportunity settled over him. Yet he knew opportunity alone could not win a war. Precision, patience, and the resolve to finish what he began were equally essential. Ghost Wind strengthened his grip on the rifle, aware that every second the shield remained unstable dragged him closer to become the fulcrum upon which humanity's survival balanced. Far below the ridge, scattered resistance fighters continued to retreat into forested ravines, tried to outrun the drones sweeping across the mountainside. Their voices crackled through Ghost Wind's receiver, some frantic, some defeated, all exhausted. He heard fragments of pleas for medical supplies, short bursts of gunfire, and the choking static of transmissions cut off mid-sentence. Each sound added weight to his decision to stay hidden in the snow rather than rush to reinforce them. A sniper's purpose was to shift the battlefield without revealing his presence. If he abandoned his position now, the entire ridge would fall, and with it, the last chance to dismantle the Vrax's offensive in the Rockies. The shield flickered again, brighter this time, as though strained by a force it could not contain. General Zord stiffened on the command deck, his attention snapping toward the consoles behind him. Ghost Wind studied the general's face through the scope. Alien or not, the expression was unmistakable, confusion giving way to anger. The moment the barrier collapsed, Ghost Wind fired. The shot pierced the command deck window and struck Zorth with such precision that even the Vrax's soldiers froze in disbelief, unable to comprehend how a primitive human weapon had pierced their defenses. The general crumpled, and chaos erupted inside the cruiser. Alarm shrieked. Lights stuttered. Soldiers rushed toward the fallen commander, shouting in their guttural language. The ship trembled as auxiliary systems attempted to compensate for the sudden breach. Through the scope, Ghost Wind watched the pandemonium unfold, but he did not linger to enjoy the sight. A sniper did not wait for applause or a confirmation. He already knew the shot had landed exactly where it needed to. He slid backward across the icy ledge, disappearing into the shadows of a narrow crevice he had scouted hours earlier. The mountains absorbed him like a breath of wind, swallowed into the cold. Only moments later, Vrax's drones flooded the ridge, scanning the terrain with beams capable of reading thermal signatures through rock. Ghost Wind pressed himself against the frozen wall, slowing his breathing until even the faint heat of his lungs blended with the stone's natural chill. He listened to the mechanical humming drift above him, searching for a sign of detection, but none came. As the drones moved away, the sound of the crashing cruiser reverberated through the valley, a thunderous testament to what one bullet could accomplish. Flames erupted as the ship tumbled along the mountainside, carving a path of destruction through the snow. For a brief, fragile moment, a sense of victory flickered in Ghost Wind's chest. But victory was not safety, and it certainly was not the end. The death of a general did not break an empire. It provoked it. Within minutes, the Dominion initiated a planetary-wide retaliation. New orders were transmitted from the flagship, orbiting above the clouds. Every available unit was commanded to track down and eliminate the sniper responsible. Ghost Wind's actions had given humanity its first triumph, but they had also painted a target on his back brighter than any beacon. He moved swiftly through the forested descent, staying low, avoiding open terrain, and keeping his cloak wrapped tightly around him to conceal the faint heat signature of his movements. He reached a shallow cave where a small group of resistance fighters had been sheltering, their faces lit with a mixture of shock and awe when he emerged. They had witnessed the cruiser's fall and had suspected, though scarcely dared to hope, that Ghost Wind had been the one responsible. The commander greeted him with weary gratitude, though her relief was overshadowed by the grim reality of the situation. The Vraxis would not retreat from humiliation. They would escalate. Ghost Wind accepted a canteen she offered, the water cold enough to burn his throat. He listened as she relayed new intel. The Dominion had activated a specialized unit known for ruthlessly hunting high-value targets. They were already sweeping the foothills, moving with precision and coordination unlike anything human fighters could match. The message was clear. Ghostwind's triumph had brought humanity a spark of hope, but it also awakened an enemy that would stop at nothing to extinguish it. He examined his rifle, mentally assessing its condition and the remaining ammunition. The experimental rounds were gone. Only standard bullets remained. They would not breach a shield, nor would they pierce armored plating. Yet Ghostwind did not express concern. Instead, he simply nodded at the commander's report and silently began preparing his next move. He knew his survival was not merely a personal matter. It was now directly tied to humanity's morale. If he fell, the Dominion would broadcast his death across the planet as a warning. Before leaving the cave, he paused for a brief moment, allowing himself a single breath of stillness. The mountains were no longer silent. They pulsed with the movements of an enemy, growing more relentless by the hour. But Ghostwind had faced relentless enemies before. With every calculated step back into the snow, he carried not fear, but purpose. And somewhere above the storm clouds, the Dominion prepared an even greater response, one that would push Ghostwind to the edge of his endurance. The storm rolled in without warning, clouds curling over mountains like the clenched fists of an angry god. Ghostwind moved through the tightening darkness with deliberate steps, the snow cracking softly beneath his boots as flakes spiraled through the wind. The air tasted of metal, an omen he had learned never to ignore. The Vraxis hunters were close. Every instinct honed across years of conflict pulsed within him, urging caution, urging silence, urging readiness. Humanity's fragile spark of hope now depended on his next decisions, for the Dominion's retaliation was not merely persistent. It was personal. Hours earlier, the Resistance had intercepted a Vraxis transmission, revealing the identity of the new commander sent to pursue him. Varkos, a high-tier strategist notorious for dissecting his enemies' tactics before extinguishing their lives, had taken command of the hunt. Unlike Zorth, whose arrogance blinded him, Varkos respected human unpredictability enough to treat the sniper threat with lethal seriousness. He deployed adaptive drones, thermal beasts engineered for mountain climates, and a strike team trained to anticipate the movements of lone operatives. Where Zorth had taunted, Varkos calculated. Where Zorth had underestimated, Varkos analyzed. Ghostwind knew that meant one thing. He would not survive this confrontation through marksmanship alone. He needed something more, an edge that transcended weaponry. The mountains offer both concealment and betrayal. One misstep, one breath too warm, one shadow cast at the wrong moment could reveal him. Yet the harsh terrain also offered opportunities that alien precision could not predict. He scanned the ridge lines, memorizing escape routes and angles of elevation, mentally mapping every outcropping of stone and every drift of snow. Survival would require mastery of both environment and emotion. The wind softened for a moment, and in that brief stillness, Ghostwind heard them, low chittering echoes, rhythmic and unnatural. The thermal beasts, four-legged construct of alloy and living tissue, capable of detecting heartbeat vibrations from kilometers away. Their presence meant the hunters were sweeping the ridge from multiple directions. Ghostwind crouched behind a fractured boulder, angling his cloak to scatter his signature across the drifting snow. He slowed his pulse, breathing shallowly, training his body to become another piece of the mountain. The beasts passed like shadows, their glowing eyes scanning, their jaws clicking softly. When they were gone, he knew Varkos had tightened the noose further. He needed distance, but he needed high ground even more. Without elevation, he could not challenge the incoming forces, and without a strike, he would be forced into a retreat that offered no survival. He climbed the slope toward a jagged overlook. Every step fought against the wind. The ascent drained him more than he let himself admit. The cold bit through his gloves, numbing the fingers that had pulled triggers across deserts and jungles. Fatigue whispered through his bones, reminding him that even legends had limits. But Ghostwind refused to succumb to exhaustion. He was not fighting for himself. He was fighting for every terrified voice he had heard crackle through the calm, for every child sheltered in underground caverns, for every soul who still dared to hope. Reaching the overlook, He settled behind a cluster of frozen shrubs. From here, he could see the faint glimmers of Vrax's personnel moving in coordinated formation. Their precision was impressive, even unnerving. They left no gaps, executed no wasted movements. It was as though the mountain bowed around them. But Ghost Twin's thoughts hardened into focus when he saw the towering figure among them, Varkos, encased in armor that pulsed with faint violet energy. The commander moved without hesitation, his eyes scanning with predatory intelligence. He carried a weapon unlike any Ghost Twin had seen, a long conduit-like device designed to eliminate armored vehicles with a single strike. Against a lone sniper, it would be catastrophic. Ghost Twin steadied his breathing once more and lifted his rifle. But this time he did not aim for Commander. He aimed at the slope above the aliens, where a precarious wall of snow clung to the mountainside. He adjusted his angle by fractions, analyzing the wind patterns, the snow density, the structural tension built up to the storm. A direct assault would fail. Varkos wore shielding far too advanced. But the mountain might not. He fired. The bullet struck deep into the snowpack. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a low rumble began, quiet at first, then growing into a monstrous roar as the entire snow wall fractured. An avalanche surged downward like a white tidal wave, swallowing rock, trees, and alien soldiers alike. The Vrax's formation collapsed instantly, their precision shattered under nature's raw fury. Ghost Wind watched the soldiers vanish beneath the cascade, their metallic cries cut short as tons of snow and debris buried them. Yet amidst the chaos, Varkos remained visible, his armor's energy field flaring violently as it fought the crushing force. The commander staggered but did not fall. Even nature struggled to silence him. Ghost Wind felt a rare flicker of admiration, followed by the weight of what must come next. The avalanche had bought him precious moments, nothing more. Varkos would rise, furious and wounded, and the hunt would continue with renewed ferocity. Ghost Wind slid from his vantage point and began descending through a narrow ravine, knowing that the confrontation ahead would test every fiber of his being. And somewhere in the swirling snow behind him, a deep, resonant roar signaled that Varkos had survived and was coming.